Hello and welcome to this pre-recorded training session. I thought this method may be beneficial as I know all wardens have very different schedules, meaning that attending training in person or online can be difficult to arrange. I wanted to put together this slide deck as an introduction to the role for those that have just taken on the role and also as a refresher for those that are already familiar with the flood warden role. Hi, my name is Annie. I've just finished my degree and I've taken over the community resilience side of emergency planning within the council's emergency planning team, something which I'm very excited about. This Pathfinder project is of particular interest to me as the village I have moved from in Lancashire floods every year, so I'm really keen to get involved. I've put my email address on the title page of these slides. I will also include it at the end. If you have any questions or suggestions about the programme, please do get in touch. Any feedback will be massively appreciated. Very simply, this slide deck aims to provide you with a clear explanation as to what is involved in the flood warden role. It should provide you with an overview of flooding, why it occurs, the different types and the factors which can influence flooding. In addition, it will provide you with an outline as to who is responsible for the different factors that contribute to flooding mitigation and prevention. It will also explain the responsibilities of a flood warden and illustrate how the flood warden role contributes to flooding resilience. Additionally, we will look at the different types of weather warnings to understand what they mean, and finally, we will cover some health and safety factors that you must be aware of. Before we start, I thought it might be useful to provide some relevant quick definitions. A riparian owner are all landowners and tenants whose property has a watercourse within or adjacent to the boundaries of their land. Main rivers, usually larger rivers, they are defined by the Environment Agency's main river map. Ordinary watercourses are smaller rivers, streams or ditches. A culvert is a structure or a pipe that allows water to flow underground in order to avoid an obstruction, such as a road or a railway. A catchment is an area of land that is drained by a river. Flooding preparation is so important as flooding is one of the most common and widespread type of disaster that occurs within the UK. It is also a risk that we are particularly vulnerable to, with 1 in 6 properties in England being at risk of flooding and 25% of flooding occurring in areas that are not designated as flood prone. Flooding is a natural process that is beneficial for maintaining the ecosystem. However, it becomes an issue when this process occurs in the areas that we live. As climate change affects our weather, flooding events are likely to become more frequent and intense. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, thus increasing flood risk to our communities. Changes in rainfall patterns, such as timing, frequency and intensity of rainfall, could mean an increased likelihood of surface water flooding in Northamptonshire. Various types of flooding can affect the UK. Surface water flooding is the main source of flooding in Northamptonshire. It happens when rainwater flows over the surface of the ground and does not soak into the land or enter a drain or river. It usually happens during heavy rainfall and is made worse by blocked ditches and drains, very dry soils after periods of drought, and compacted or waterlogged soils. River flooding happens when a main river or ordinary watercourse cannot cope with the amount of water that is flowing into it from the surrounding land. Main rivers are usually the larger ones in the county, such as the River Nene, but some smaller, ordinary watercourses are also important for drainage. Groundwater flooding happens when water levels in the ground rise above the surface. It is common after long periods of constant heavy rainfall and is more likely in low-lying areas. Sewer flooding happens either when the pipes in the network are blocked or when there is heavy rainfall and the sewers cannot cope with the amount of water because they are not designed to cope with heavy, prolonged rainfall. The danger of this type of flooding is that the water can become contaminated with raw sewage and enter land and property or the river system. Reservoir flooding is extremely rare. It happens when there is a dam failure. The risk is low, but the resulting flooding can be very destructive. Snow melt can cause significant flooding. Unlike rainfall, which reaches the soil almost immediately, snow stores the water for some time until it melts. Long periods of snowfall can therefore result in a large volume of water being released in a short space of time. Coastal flooding does not affect Northamptonshire, but it is a common type of flooding that occurs across the country. Coastal flooding happens when there are high tides and stormy weather conditions that can result in a tidal surge, which could cause sea levels to rise over flood defences. The following factors can influence flooding likelihood and severity, such as the ability of the catchment to absorb water, changes in agricultural practices such as compaction of soil, tide locking, and finally blockages, whether this be to drains, culverts or watercourses. This is where flood wardens are of massive assistance. Through reporting these blockages to the correct authority or organisation, they can be dealt with, therefore increasing our capacity to cope with flooding incidents. There will be more on who to report these incidents to and how to do so later in the slide deck. To check if your community is at risk, click the www.gov.uk link. This will take you to the part of the government website that allows you to search. By typing in flood risk maps, you can find all related material as well as the link to the most recent flood risk map, which I have provided for you under link 2. Link 3 provides you with a direct link to the government sign up for flood warnings page. From here you can see if you are eligible to receive this service. If your area is eligible to receive the flood warning service, I have provided some information from the Flood Warden Handbook about what these alerts mean and the recommended actions to take upon receiving an alert of each type. If you are not eligible, don't worry, later in the presentation I will inform you on the other service you can use for weather alerts. Riparian owners are responsible for maintaining any watercourse, ditch or culvert running through or adjacent to their land, as well as the vegetation on the banks in order to keep these clear and prevent flooding. If the watercourse runs along the boundary between two neighbouring properties, each owner will be responsible for the maintenance up to the centre line of the watercourse. Riparian owners can face legal action if the lack of maintenance of their watercourse causes flooding. The Environment Agency is responsible for flood risk management activities on main rivers across Northamptonshire, for regulating reservoir safety and providing river flood warnings. They also have the power to undertake work on main rivers to fix a flooding issue, but would charge this cost to the riparian owner. Highways England is responsible for drainage of motorways and some A roads. Northamptonshire Highways are responsible for flooding issues on other roads, including block drains and gullies. However, they are not normally responsible for ditches alongside roads. This is the responsibility of the adjacent landowner in most cases. Northamptonshire County Council is responsible for coordinating the management of flood risk from surface water, groundwater and ordinary courses. However, this does not mean that they can or will undertake works to fix a flooding issue, but they can investigate to find out who the riparian owner is and therefore who is responsible, and advise on potential solutions. Bedford Group of Internal Drainage Boards carry out consenting works on all ordinary watercourses across the county on behalf of Northamptonshire County Council. For more information, visit thefloodtoolkit.com/contacts. Northamptonshire Water and Sewerage Companies are responsible for managing the flooding and flood risk from public sewers and water mains across the county. Flood wardens are members of the local community who volunteer to help their communities become more resilient and prepared for flooding. Flood wardens are the eyes and the ears of the community, whether out walking the dog or just walk into the shop. Flood wardens can keep an eye out for blocked drains or similar. As previously mentioned, monitoring the condition of drain, culverts, streams and other watercourses within your community and reporting any defects or blockages to the appropriate agency or landowner is a crucial role in ensuring that our mitigative measures are able to work as effectively and efficiently as possible to minimise flooding. Look for blocked drains and ditches, debris and watercourse, heavy rainfall running off farmland, blockages in grates, collapses in culverts, and any changes in the flow of water and watercourses. It is especially important to do this when heavy rain is forecast. Get others involved in monitoring, for example, dog walkers who regularly walk past the watercourses and other important areas. But remember to prioritise safety at all times and observe any watercourses from a safe distance. Here are just a few different examples of the type of maintenance issues that should be reported. Later in the presentation, I will show you a table containing information about who you would report such maintenance issues to and how to contact them. Other aspects of the role include talking to the community about flood-related issues, therefore increasing general awareness and knowledge, creating your own household emergency plan and encouraging other residents to do the same, creating your own emergency grab bag as detailed in the household emergency plan and encouraging other residents to put one together. The link for our household emergency plan template is on the slides. Sign up to the various warning services such as the EA's flood warning service, which as discussed earlier you may be eligible for. I have provided the link again, so please click on the link and see if your postcode is eligible for this service. There is also the Met Office's Weather Warnings, which is a service that anyone can use. They have an app called the Met Office Weather Forecast, which can be downloaded from the Google Play or Apple Store, allowing you to receive alerts to your phone. I will explain later in the slide deck what these warnings mean. Similarly, it would also be very useful if you could encourage other members of the community to sign up for or download these warning systems. It would also be highly beneficial if you could pass these alerts and warnings on via your social media page or similar when they are issued. Identifying where flooding infrastructure, especially drains, are located within your community. This is particularly useful during a flooding incident as this information can be utilised by the council to improve our response. Please share this information with us via the email address provided on these slides. Gather information about what localised or residential flood measures exist within your community, such as property level protection products like air brick covers and door guards. Having this information handy will allow you to prompt residents with these products to check them or put them in place upon receipt of a flood warning. Collect flood event information including photographs. Notes and photographs on flow routes can be useful, and make sure that any information submitted is accurate in terms of date, time and location. Support the development of a community flood plan by engaging with your parish, and make sure that during a flood you follow the procedures set out in your community flood plan. I've attached a link on this slide for the household emergency plan mentioned. Please do visit the website and complete one of these. They are very useful as a method of preparation. If a flooding incident does begin, you may be aware of this before the local authorities are. As always, if you are facing a life-threatening situation, please call 999. Otherwise, please call the number on this slide, which is our 24/7 on-duty phone number, to provide information to the local authority. Please only use this number during emergency situations. You may also be asked by us to provide crucial information about the flooding incident. If you do call to provide information or are asked to provide information, please use the prompt provided. E. The exact location of the incident. You can provide a postcode or download the What 3 Words app to provide an exact location. T. Type of incident. Try to describe the extent of the flooding. H. Any hazards that are present, if known. A. Access. Please report any access routes that are blocked or obstructed. N. Number of casualties. On the slide, I provided a link to the What 3 Words website so you can find out more about the usefulness of this app. Or you can just go to your app store and download it now by searching What 3 Words. The app is free to download and use and is extremely helpful to the emergency services during an incident, as it allows us to use precise location data to find out where incidents are happening. Please follow guidance from the emergency services at all times. The emergency services take the lead during a flood event, so be sure to follow their advice, as you may be placing yourself and others at risk of harm if you do not. And if you are told to evacuate from an area, follow the guidance you are given. Provide the emergency services with local knowledge and information. Your strength as a community volunteer is your detailed knowledge of your local area and the people living within it. Relay this information to the emergency services during a flood, but be mindful that this information may relate to individual properties or persons and should therefore be managed responsibly at all times. Help relay information to the local community. After a flooding event, the wider community often needs help finding out information and where the appropriate places to go and get help are. As a volunteer, you can be a vital conduit of information between agencies and the community. Please keep the council informed of flood warden contact details. If these details change, please send me an email. I provided my email address at the beginning of the slide deck. Some useful information to know and inform community members about during flood recovery. Firstly, to be careful of anyone offering repair work. Always obtain independent advice and ask for references. You can also check that they are registered with the government by visiting the link attached. Secondly, insurers should be contacted as soon as possible after a flood. Residents who will be making insurance claims may need to leave damaged belongings in place until the insurance company has authorised their removal, otherwise their claim might be affected. The insurance company may need to send loss adjusters to visit the property and evaluate the damage, to take photographs of all damaged areas and goods. As I hope is clear, reporting information is one of the most important aspects of the flood warden role. The next few slides will be dedicated on how to report this information and who to report it to. As such, I provided you with a table containing the contact information that you should need to report a flooding or blockage incident. Please make sure that you report any flooding incident on the flood toolkit after reporting the incident to the relevant agency. On the last slide, I provided you with two URL links to report floods. One will take you to Street Doctor, allowing you to report blocked drains or gullies, and the other will take you to the Flood Toolkit, allowing you to report flooding incidents that occur. On this slide, I provided you with some more information on the two methods. Please take some time to explore the services, and if you have any questions about how to use either of these services, please send me an email. It is important to stay up to date with weather warnings so that proactive actions can take place. Warnings provide us with a heads up as to what can be expected, which allows us to prepare and put plans into place. Flood wardens can help by passing these warnings on to family and friends or by sharing them on social media platforms. Registering in advance means you can be better prepared ahead of an incident. To sign up for the Met Office severe weather warnings, please use the URL provided. Alternatively, you can download the Met Office weather app for live updates. The Met Office provides 3 levels of weather warnings depending on the anticipated level of disruption. Yellow is the first level of warning. This means that severe weather is possible, as is disruption. Amber means the level of risk has increased, potential disruption is more likely. At this stage, it is worth thinking about changing your plans. You may want to consider if there is anything you need to do ahead of the severe weather to minimise the impact and protect yourself. Red is the highest level of alert, meaning that extreme weather is expected, including widespread disruption and damage. You must take action to protect yourself and others. You should avoid travelling where possible and follow the advice of the emergency services and local authorities. There are a few health and safety considerations that must be considered whilst undertaking activities as a part of this role. These will be covered over the next 2 slides. Always stay at least 2 metres away from the edge of watercourses and floodwater. During a flood, make sure that you follow the advice and guidance of the emergency services. Do not enter areas that have been cordoned off by the emergency services. If the emergency services tell you to evacuate, you should follow that advice. In an emergency, when there is danger to life, always call 999. Always be aware of the risk of contaminated water during a flood. Flood water can carry many different diseases, so make sure you are mindful of this and thoroughly wash if you come into contact with flood water. Electrical hazards exist even after water dissipates, so if an electrical appliance has been in contact with water, have a professional check it out before you use it. It may need to be repaired or replaced. After flood, equipment such as clothing, boots and gloves may be contaminated. Wash all items thoroughly before they are used again. Avoid walking or driving through flood water. This can put you at risk of slipping, contamination, drowning and injury from submerged hazards. Do not attempt to operate or repair flood defence structures or equipment. Your top priority at all times is to ensure your own safety, so do not place yourself at risk of injury or harm. Do not try to deal with argumentative people yourself, even if they are members of your community. And do not attempt to enter or clear watercourses or culverts. Here I have provided a final overview of the flood warden role depending on the situation. Please read through these responsibilities. Remember that during a flood you must keep yourself safe. If you have any questions about your role, please do email me via the email address provided on the first and last slides. This slide deck has covered how to find out if your area is at risk of flooding, who is responsible for flood prevention maintenance, what the flood warden role involves, how to report flooding and who to report it to, what the Met Office weather warnings mean, and finally we have covered some relevant and important health and safety advice surrounding floods. If you do wish to find out more information, please explore our website, in particular our how-to guides and It's an Emergency pages. Use the link that I have provided. Thank you for taking the time to listen to or read these slides. I hope that the role of a flood warden is clear, and it is also clear how you can report information about both floods and prevention defects and blockages. If you have any further questions about anything covered today, please send me an email. Similarly, if you have any feedback, including any improvements that could be made for any future training sessions, please also send me an email. I hope that these slides were useful to you. Please feel free to reuse any of the information that I have provided to you today. Thanks again and have a good week.